We are calling the Tuesday, March 25th School Board Workshop for Real Estate Facilities Update to order. Dr. Shanoff and Mr. Sharma, left my brain. You now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Board members, wanted to provide you an update on facilities and real estate, as we typically do. Want to make sure that you all have all of the pertinent updates related to our facilities program. As you know, the facilities program represents a very large chunk of the school district's budget. It's also partially funded through our taxpayers in that sales tax referendum. So we want to make sure that we're very transparent about the work that's taking place within the facilities department. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Sharma, our Chief Facilities Officer, who will take us through the update.
Good afternoon, members of the board, Dr. Shanoff. Thank you for the opportunity to present. We kept the agenda very broad so we can show across the board what we're doing. So we'll cover our major projects, what's going to happen this summer coming up, some of the challenges that we're experiencing, because none of this is flawless by any means. I would use this opportunity as well to update you on the half-penny sales tax program. We are in year 9 of 20, and so I wanted to show you where we started, where we are, and how we got to where we are, and how we're going to go forward. So we'll look at some of how we plan these projects, just very high level. Some of the budget impacts that we've had, because obviously when we went out for the sales tax, it was in 2016, and then COVID happened, and we have all sorts of escalation in materials that we use for construction projects. And an update on what we call deferred maintenance, but maintenance that ideally we kind of push forward because of lack of funding, or just generally because they were still in good shape, so we didn't necessarily replace a piece of equipment or a roof. I wanted to update you on some changes that are going to take place within this space, the boardroom. Then we're going to do just a quick real estate update, and if there are any questions, Rhonda Blake and Joan Bansickle, our directors of planning and design and construction, are here to help with those.
Can you advance the slide?
Yes. And then I'd also like to, last thing that I'll cover in the presentation is how the facilities program aligns with the district's overall strategic plan, to show that we're all paddling in the same direction. So the next slide, slide 3, is the overall construction program for the district that the facilities department oversees. It's about $20 million, not 920,000, I assure you. The planning portion of this is taking a significant dip because we've put a lot of the projects into design and construction over the last two years, and so we've kind of caught up with most of our large projects. But slide 4 shows you the projects that we have in planning, and these are some of the smaller projects that we got from our maintenance department, our deferred maintenance list. This is usually a part of the budget. So Celebration High School and PATS, we're going to look at starting to plan their HVAC renovation projects for those. Some life safety requirements for Parkway PM Wells. That is just something we're planning very early, but as the board has approved the agreement to go forward and acquire the property, we're starting to plan that as well.
This is to retrofit the school with our safety measures?
So yes, so the short-term plan would be to operationalize the school. So we'll look at the fire alarm, intercom, making sure that our IT can control it, all of the safety requirements that we would typically meet in a traditional SDOC school. So over this summer, our plan is to go in and do those minimal things, and then plan a much larger project to meet the program requirements of the school. If it becomes whatever that long-term plan is that the board decides, we're going to make those changes.
You're doing secure lobby over the summer?
Yes, for this school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah. Correct. Fire alarm, secure lobby, intercom, at least those are the things that we've identified. Doors and locks, cameras, fencing, that sort of stuff. The window film that goes on all the windows around, those are all the things that we're planning this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're looking, most of these are HVAC projects that are larger HVAC projects generally that our maintenance department doesn't handle, so they pass them over to us, and it's part of the budgeting cycle. So a lot of those are going to go into the design process. The design list is significant. The largest one on there is still the K8DD, which is located in the Lonebridge area, off of Hickory Tree, Old Hickory. It's at the corner of 19th and Orange Avenue. That school should have ideally, in our 5-year capital plan a few years ago, be opening this summer, but because of the issues we've had with developer bringing that property online, we haven't been able to. So a lot of our rezoning and stuff like that we have done in that area has been to accommodate these students that should have gone to this school. So there are some portables at Hickory Tree Elementary School currently to accommodate some of that capacity. So that's the largest project. Majority of the rest of those projects, as you notice, is a significant amount of HVAC projects. And most of those we're targeting this summer, like we did last summer. I think we did about 18 major HVAC renovation projects last summer, and we're going to target a similar approach for this summer. And there is a slide there that shows you that. Projects in construction account for it accounts for a majority of the budget, $774 million. It's a significant lift. There are some projects in here that have been completed, but they haven't dropped off the list yet because we typically don't drop them off until we paid out the final pay applications and get all our warranties and stuff like that. So Knights Point, Voyager, Neo City Academy, the additions that opened last summer are still on here. And within the next month or two, we're planning to bring those final change orders and pre-applications to the board. So this number is going to go down significantly as well. And the following slides, as much as this is a lengthy presentation, a lot of these are photographs and updates of where these projects are, specifically the ones in construction. Slide 7 is a map that shows where all of our major construction projects are. And major construction for us, as a district, by definition, are projects over $1 million. Typically, we don't put on the slides themselves projects that are smaller than those, but if you look at the bottom of each of those lists, there is a miscellaneous total, like $6 million in construction. Those are typically the smaller projects that are $1 million. There's $5.3 million of miscellaneous projects in design that are smaller than $1 million. So we're working across the district, every single area possible, we're doing work. And then I'll get right into the major projects that we have. So Cross Prairie K8, new school, new name that was just assigned to it. But this is being targeted to be opened in May. It's going to be fully operational in May, where we can start moving in. FF&E has been ordered. The slides are going to show you sod is starting to go down on the exterior of it. We are paving. The track is already built and operational, starting to stripe. We have canopy going in, bus loops being built, we're connecting to the roads. Everything is ready for this school to stay on schedule for opening. So slide number 11 shows you mechanical rooms. The school's already got permanent power, HVAC. Phone lines have been dropped, elevators have been built, we're building out the inside. Slide 12 shows you like a typical classroom where it is. It's much further along than when we took these photographs. Things are changing so fast. So flooring is going in, ceiling tiles are being dropped, and we're doing final paint, and the FF&E is going to start going in there in a few weeks. Our IT team is starting to work and pulling in their fiber, making sure switches are up and running so that we have control of all of the computers and cameras and the system. So that project is doing really well. Then I'll shift to slide 14, which is high school AAA. The two maps that you're seeing shows the amount of wetlands that we have on the site. They're dotted in the red lines. That's where we got the delay when we didn't have our Army Corps permit. And you'll see it in the following photographs. We've made significant progress. So the roof's being built on pretty much every building with the exception of the cafeteria and the gym. Those were the two buildings that were affected by the wetland permits. And so we have been making significant progress. We've worked with our construction manager to make sure that our schedule has been recovered. And so currently we are back on track to open the school on time. They are starting to work on the interior floors. Most of these buildings are 3 stories, so you start with the roof and then we work downward. So roofing is starting to go in and all of the underground and mechanical stuff's happening. Slide number 17 is where you'll see where the wetland work is going to happen. This is most of our athletic fields, the bus loop area, and so as they're demolishing the wetland areas and building those pieces for the school. Slide number 19.
What's the estimated time for this one?
This is the current date is May of 2026 for it to be open. So slide 19 shows you some of the interior work that's starting to happen. You're seeing decking going in so they can put roofs in. And then of course, all of the walls and stuff like that's gonna start to go up. Slide 21, transportation. Well, it's East Osceola Transportation and Operations. We have full use of this facility now, so it just got substantial completion, so we have staff that have moved in, and we're starting to do testing with our fueling systems, making sure that we have all of the bus bays operational. So there is quite a bit of testing here before we start moving buses over here, but we do have staff over there already. I think we have the first BAB meeting being held there tomorrow morning first. I think we'll do a tour for the BAB team as well. And next couple of slides.
Are we starting to deploy from east starting next school year?
Absolutely, that's the plan. So we're going through all of the testing that we need to right now, running buses through it, making sure that the bus wash works the right way, that the fueling system is actually recording the right way, getting all of the computers up and running. So we have staff in here setting that up. The intent, I don't know, Scott, when is to pull the trigger? Is it new school year?
Yes, but beginning May, we'd like to start running the buses from the Michigan Avenue compound out of Nova.
Okay. So you're gonna do like a phased approach?
It'll be in full effect for next school year, but right now, just the Michigan Avenue buses starting in May.
We have expo facility there.
It's a much smaller facility, so yes, I guess that would be considered a phased approach.
Yes, and we're restructuring some of our routes for next year too, because some of our routes come out of the Simpson compound that go east. So we're restructuring all the routes, so we have them just coming out of Nova, just out of Simpson, or just out of the west side, servicing those areas.
Slide 24 on just shows some of the internal work that's there. All of the furniture has been moved in. Like I said, staff's operational. There is a training room at this facility, which mimics the one that's at Simpson and would be replicated into the West facility as well to give the district a little bit more capacity for training that we need for staff throughout. Slide 27 shows you sort of the driver bays, because obviously our drivers need a place to have downtime, and slide 28 shows you what the current bus bays look like. We're currently working with the manufacturer to assemble the lifts and stuff that goes into this area so that we can maintain buses. Slide 29 is the last one for this facility, which shows the HVAC system that we're running. Slide 30, we'll move to Osceola County School for the Arts. Call it right. OXA. So we've started, we're hot and heavy. You always point out when I use that, but I think it's a construction term now. But we are aggressively working on the OXA project.
Yeah.
That's better than that.
Much better.
The classroom, the slide 32 will show you the classroom building. Yeah, it's set, 32. Shows you where the classroom buildings, the foundations have been poured and we're pouring the tilt walls. This new classroom building in the center, because this is a phased project, is expected to be open at the end of this calendar year. So over the Christmas break, the intention is to move the students from the portables that are temporarily within the track area into the classroom building and get rid of the portables, which would allow us to finish up the rest of the project. The next slide shows you some of the interior work that's happening, because we've started some of the renovation within the auditorium area, and we've built a new scene shop behind the auditorium, and we're simultaneously working in the new cafeteria space, which is slide 34. Slide 35, the West Osceola Transportation and Operation facility. This is moving ahead really well. We've completed the foundations on this, and the building itself is actually going to start coming in the next couple of weeks. We're starting to make significant progress with it, and we're working through challenges we have with the access to the property. We have to build a bridge over 120 feet of wetlands that we can't demolish because of the muck that's under it. So we're currently working on the design for the bridge portion of it, and then we will start pricing that out soon. But currently, the two parts of the project are lined up so that it will be completed on time.
And when is this one also
It is next year, some.
26?
Yes, ma'am.
August?
No,
April?
I think it's April, yeah, April of 2020.
So I'm assuming consideration when you're figuring out the bus routes that some of those are gonna move to west.
So the ones at Horizon right now will be moving to west. The ones, we have some routes that are at Simpson that go kind of both directions. So the ones at Simpson will strictly be in the central of the county. And then that's when the east and west zones will strictly be east and west sides. So we won't have those split routes coming from the central anymore.
Slide 37 is our newest project that just broke ground, Reedy Creek Elementary School. It's just a rendering of what the facility is gonna look like. It's a new elementary school that accommodate 948 student stations. I think we were able to get a little bit out of it. There is a 2-story building that's to the left of that rendering. Is an existing building that will be remaining, and we are building an ESC office out for that, out in that area, as well as some traditional classrooms. So parents in that area would be able to access some of our ESC services at the school site versus having to come all the way here to Quebec. The next slide is just some aerials that show what the existing site looks like, and then slide 39 shows how we've started to move dirt around, moving the dirt off of the existing building, the walls that are there in preparation for the new building to be built. Typically between January to the summer, we don't get a lot of work done because students are in school, but we were still able to this year pull off replacing the Osceola. Oh, I'm sorry. The next slide is slide 40. We were still able to pull off replacing the Osceola High School track, which we've turned over to them and is fully operational again, and we did not interrupt their athletic season this year. And slide 42 shows the HVAC systems at Bellalago Academy that we replaced as well. We used temporary AC in place during the colder months, where we were able to get the work done and get another project off the list. We also replaced the roof for the gym at Bellalago Academy this year. This year, so just some photographs showing that these have been done. So we're making progress with some of the projects out of the normal cycle. So we're still able to get some projects done without interrupting student learning. Slide 45 is the outdoor dining expansion at St. Cloud High School. Because we added the student stations, we needed to come back and do this. So this project's much further along than this. That's not significant. Slide 46, we have a pretty busy summer, just like we did last year. There's a significant amount of HVAC projects that are gonna get done, but we're also going to focus on replacing Lakeview's roof. We're gonna look at doing a lot of traffic projects. So Narcoossee Middle School is gonna get some work done. We're going to do Liberty High School. We're gonna make some modifications to their entrance so we can make it safer for the separation between buses and cars for our students and our staff. Bellalago, we actually finished. We did quite a few projects at Bellalago, but we actually finished up their project out of the normal cycle. But again, a lot of the heavy lift is going to be HVAC projects while students are not in school. So we're going to be doing new chiller projects, chiller plant replacement, pumps, air handlers, a lot of it during the summer. And we're going to start at Celebration K8 recabling the entire school as well during the summer. So as much as we get all of this work done, typically we run into challenges and things that we're normally having to clear in order to keep our schedules and making sure that these are done. For high school AAA, we still have the challenge with a Bluebird Parkway, which is a road that's not built yet, but is intended for our main entrance to come off of. And so the school is designed that way. So we're currently in the final stages of wrapping up an agreement between the county, Osceola County, the city of St. Cloud, and us to get that portion of the road built that connects to Nova Road so that our entrance will be operational for day one. And our expectation is that we will bring that for board approval at least by the next board meeting. That's our push. And then our regular challenges that we're constantly battling with material pricing and lead times and understanding what tariffs are potentially going to do to some of our projects going forward. I would tell you that I'm currently seeing contractors being very weary of putting pricing to bidding jobs without knowing if some of their material prices might skyrocket by the time they get a contract issued to them. And so we bid the HVAC, did the fire alarm projects for 4 schools, and it came in significantly higher. We're trying to dig into why, because historically we've never paid this much money for fire alarm projects, especially retrofits. But we're thinking it's because of the uncertainty around what the impacts of tariffs are going to be on material pricing. We're already dealing with historically high pricing since COVID, which haven't really corrected themselves, especially when it comes to electrical gear or structural steel, concrete, and to some extent. But a lot of those are driven by the current market and construction around the Central Florida area. And now we still have another uncertainty that's been thrown on top of it. So we're trying to manage it the best we can and still keep our projects going forward. At this point, I think we're going to have to do 3 out of the 4 fire alarm projects. We're not by any means putting anyone at risk. We have an operational fire alarm system. It's just at the end of its life it needs to be replaced. So we might end up having to do 3 out of the 4 that we originally planned to do. Just because that's the budget that we have, correct?
Like what, how much higher?
So
20?
for the 4 projects, yes, it's probably closer to 30-35% that we have seen, higher than we expected. And that was after we readjusted our budgets probably about a year and a half ago. So again, just generally, there is a bit of uncertainty in the market as we're seeing pricing coming in, and we're trying to understand what the impacts are going to be to us. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions because ultimately we have to have a balanced budget as we go forward. So we're constantly working on land acquisition. As new developments are coming online, we're trying to understand that as well. A lot of developments have been put on hold because of whether it's permitting or pricing or understanding where materials are going to come from. And so the planning team is currently, they're constantly working on keeping up with that to determine where new schools are going to be located or needs to be located. And so there are 2 slides that we're going to show where that is. And then understanding how we finance our projects going forward, especially when it comes to the quarter penny and the half penny sales tax, which is something that we're constantly working on to make sure that we have the funding to build priorities. So slide 48, just 2 slides to show you what we think sort of going to happen. And I'm just using cement products as an example in slide 48. But as you can see, the 3-year trend is still not expected to go down. So our schools are built out of concrete, and so are all of our driveways and everything else. And so it is going to, just that one material is going to have potentially going to have a significant impact. And so there is quite a bit to dig into as we get into to our projects, because we don't necessarily have an alternate material to go build our schools out of, especially in Central Florida area, to say that we're going to build schools out of wood. That is just not going to happen. So we're trying to understand how this is going to impact our budget overall. Slide 49 is just showing you similar, just in a table format, but we still expect structural steel to go up over the next 6 to 12 months. Again, a lot of it is probably uncertainty. Electrical gear, generators. We think we've finally gotten HVAC where we were comfortable that our estimates were reasonable, because we know where pricing is and where the lead times were going to be, and then suddenly we're probably going to be surprised. One of the things that we realized, especially with HVAC equipment, especially along the borders of Canada and Mexico, a lot of our HVAC is actually being manufactured in Mexico. But parts of that HVAC might make it over to the US for motors to be built or chips to be built, and then it goes back to Mexico. The thought process is, it's still not clear whether every time that material crosses the border, tariffs would be tacked onto it, and what that pricing impact is going to be. So even our manufacturers are having a hard time trying to tell us what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months.
Several of our contracts that have come through have already added clauses in it that prices can go up based on tariffs. So that is just something for you all to know.
assuming you've already done research on alternative manufacturers and there is nothing.
Not a lot. There aren't many options. We work with 3 of the largest manufacturers for HVAC, just as HVAC as an example, in the entire United States. And so we've been getting information from them. It's not a knee-jerk reaction to move manufacturing totally to the States. A lot of the raw materials come from outside of the US, but just the time that it takes to set plants up and get the supply chain issues worked out, it takes years for stuff like that to get corrected. And so they're potentially going to start looking at it, but there aren't many options because most people operate the same way. Interestingly enough, most HVAC manufacturers probably buy their motors from 2 firms only across the entire world. So they all buy it from the same people anyways, they just put it into their parts. Slide 51. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our sales surtax program. This is what funds a lot of our renovation, well, it funds all of our renovation projects and a lot of the deferred maintenance projects that you've seen. Outside of projects that are new schools that create new seats or new buildings that create new seats, everything else is funded out of the half-penny sales tax, which the voters approved in 2016. And this is a flyer that was put out to the community when we asked for it in November of 2016. And as you can see on the left-hand side of that slide, there is a list of 30 schools. And the thought process was that we would follow that list sequentially because we put the schools in the worst shape up front. And so you can see that we're down to Reedy Creek Elementary School, which is the 6th on the list. So the original master schedule that we had in order to accomplish this program over the 20 years that it's there for is on slide 52. And as you'll notice, year 25, we're behind. And I wanted to explain how that happens. I'll start with how we typically would maintain, how projects come about. So slide 53 shows you on a new school, essentially how we should maintain it for 50 years if we're going to do it the right way. This is theoretically how it should be done. This is the right way that it should be done. It's the best, and this is based on input from manufacturers and different suppliers that we use on how long, what the useful life is of their materials. So how we actually plan it is you do what you will see on slide 54, where we create projects. Years 10 through 12 is where we would typically do what is called a refresh project. We would do minimal things, like mostly a facelift. Painting, we would do selective mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. We would do some renovations to restroom. Typically look at whatever FF&E needs to be replaced, and mostly we'll focus on ADA and code compliance issues. By years 24 through 26, that's usually the half of what the useful life is of one of our facilities that's built for 50 years, is when we would go in and do a comprehensive renovation. We haven't done that quite a bit because up to 2016, we weren't well funded. And school districts in Florida are not typically funded at the level necessary to keep up with their facilities with the state. So it is usually a local effort, which is why the half-penny sales tax is so important to us. And so we've gone ahead and done a significant amount of projects, but page 54 shows you how we plan these projects. So, for example, when we went out in 2017, the budget that was established for Osceola, it's a recent project, so I'll use that as an example, was $58 million. And that included all of the design, the FF&E, all of the soft costs that we would typically include, as well as the construction. When we did the project the way that we're supposed to do it, like we should plan it, and make that project fit the program that the school district wants, we ended up with an $89 million budget. That's a significant gap. And so it's similarly, I'll use the next slide, is what happens at Reedy Creek. When we planned Reedy Creek in 2017, an elementary school used to cost about $18 million. That was a good price back in 2016. I built them for $11 million when I was a project manager back 10 years ago. But the budget for Reedy Creek to build a prototype elementary school that is consistent with every other elementary school that this district has built, with the same standards, with the same kind of HVAC, with the same kind of roofing, with the same kind of FF&E inside, is going to cost us about $59 million. Essentially, what I'm showing you is that the schedule could not be met for the half penny sales tax, because we're having to wait for the half penny sales tax to build up to a certain amount so we can actually do these projects correctly. Now, I can tell you that we can spend $18 million at Reedy Creek, but you wouldn't get a new school. You might not even see the work that we would put in for $18 million in today's money. It's mostly going to be HVAC, fire alarm, intercom, things that people don't see but are necessary for the safe operation of a school. So that's part of why we are where we are. Just because we don't have enough of the money coming in to accelerate the program as fast as we need it to, but we're spending the money as efficiently as we can.
So I understand that we want to do all of the things, but remind me, this program expires when?
2036.
2036, and then we
Yes,
have to go back and, okay, so at this rate, expires in 2036, it's pretty, I'm gonna bet that prices are not gonna go down. So if we go at this rate, we're not gonna finish the list.
Generally why I did this presentation the way that I did it, so that it becomes clear that the chances of us finishing the list by 2036 it's not high.
Right, so, assuming that, okay, maybe we can go back out and renew the program, but let's assume that we don't, and this is the list that we submitted. Is there a conversation that we need to have about changing the way that we do these projects so that we can at least touch all of the schools? Or are we just saying some of y'all are just gonna have to?
No, by no means. So the following slides, I want to show you some of the things that we're doing. That's fine. Well, it's a great.
Okay.
It's a great question. It really is a great question, because I want to be clear. As a school board, you will never be caught up on your facilities. It-
Right, sure.
Even by 2036, and here is why I say
Right.
that. Because by 2036, Knights Point and Voyager would be coming around for a renovation project.
Yeah, I
So
understand
you
that.
start adding on to
And
that.
I'm assuming you're going to give us more information about how you're gonna tackle this, but what we don't want is to have a, Poinciana Academy of Fine Arts that doesn't get touched. That's way older than a Knights Point, so.
100% agree with you. So I want to explain what deferred maintenance projects are. And so outside of the comprehensive renovation that you're seeing us doing at Reedy Creek, knocking it down, rebuilding it, or we're doing at Oxa where we're renovating, and the next school on that list is Boggy Creek, which we're starting to plan. So the last board meeting, we brought the Castaldi analysis that shows that we can knock that school down now and build it. So it's a matter of budgeting that when we can afford to, and then we will happily go ahead and do that project. But we can't spend money we don't have. Essentially, the maintenance department keeps track based on that 50-year slide that I showed you how you should maintain things. Our maintenance department is phenomenal. Those guys keep up. If an HVAC system is supposed to last you 15 years, I've seen HVAC systems that are in the year 25. They keep it. They find parts, they get innovative, they buy parts on eBay sometimes in order to get things to keep working. We've done that in order to keep things going. And so this deferred maintenance list, one of the things that we've started budgeting a year ago, so this will be year 3 of us doing it, $28 million that we put towards these deferred maintenance projects. And so if you look at the list of schools here, you have Celebration High School, Celebration K-8, you have Cypress Elementary, Eastlake Elementary, Harmony High School, Highlands Elementary, Horizon Middle, where we've done, whether it's we're fixing their parking lots, or we are fixing their HVAC, or we're replacing windows, or air handlers, or chillers, or carpet. So the the maintenance department keeps a very detailed list of the things that needs to be done at these schools. And so last summer, a lot of the projects that we did were schools that are not on the list yet to get a comprehensive renovation. So the next slide actually shows you what the ask is for maintenance this year, the slide 58. We can't afford to do all of this, but what we've done is we are prioritizing the schools. And this is not a school that is up for a comprehensive renovation, but you're looking at Pats, you're looking at Parton Settlement Elementary School, Deerwood Elementary School, Mill Creek Elementary School, Parkway Middle School, Hickory Tree Elementary School, where we're looking at HVAC. We're figuring out the things that are in the worst shape, and we're going out and we're doing them. So essentially, since 2022 to now, I think I'm missing a slide. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's there to the bottom left. From July of 2022 to current day, the district has spent $159 million of half-penny sales tax on these projects. But these are not the projects that everyone sees as a splash. It's not new paint, it's not new ceiling tiles, it's not new lights. But it's important to note that we have touched every single facility in this district in some form since 2022. So we are figuring out what the worst is. We're not letting things fail by any means. $159 million is like two new elementary school, two new K-8 schools, but we have spent that amount overall. So what the maintenance department is seeing is that those projects that they were suddenly buying parts on eBay because they're no longer being manufactured or the parts not available, though that list is starting to come down significantly as we're continuing with the comprehensive renovation program. So the idea is that the two things will catch up at some point, but again, it's not perfection. It's not going to be 100%. I can almost say with certainty that by 2036 that we wouldn't be completely caught up, but we will be in much, much better shape than we are thanks to that half-penny sales tax.
Is there anything to say updating the original master schedule to what it's currently looking like we'll be able to accomplish by
We
the
can-
time this sales tax is?
So yes, I can take a shot at that, but it just depends on how much half-penny sales tax come in, which is still in projection, because if something happens, or probably shouldn't say this, but for instance, if we go into a recession and people don't buy as much, then you don't have as much half-penny sales tax coming. So I can absolutely do that. I actually keep the original schedule to motivate my team and myself that we're behind and that we need to do this. So we keep looking at it, but I don't think we often tell the story that we've spent $159 million on the other schools, every single school, in some form, trying to help them to be better. But yes, we can absolutely, we will correct the schedule to show what we think can actually happen. So next slide, slide 59, is I just wanted to do a quick update on what's gonna happen to this boardroom area. So we know it, our streaming capabilities are not necessarily the best. Some of our lighting needs to be updated. And so we looked at a comprehensive project to make this better. And so essentially what you're looking at on the next slide is how the boardroom is going to be reoriented. So it'll be turned around where that would be the back of the dais. And essentially, we're going to make changes to the dais itself. It's going to become smaller. A lot of it is driven by, well, not a lot of it, all of it is driven by code requirements for exits and ramps and stuff like that. So these are some of the changes. And then I have some renderings of what it will look like as it goes through in slide 61 going down. So you'll notice that there are several views that we've done showing what it would look like from the dais, what it would look like from behind, making sure that we have all of the right exits. Most of what is going to happen with this outside of the reorientation is going to be in the technology that goes into the boardroom to make sure that it streams correctly, that the cameras are in the right location, so that we can get better views of what's happening right now. So our expectation is that we are going to start construction in this space June 15th, which is the day after the last board meeting in June. And then the first board meeting back in the space is going to be the November 18th board meeting. In that time, we are planning to move board meetings to Gateway High School. And our expectation is to host them in the auditorium. So we're starting to test equipment, making sure that we have everything necessary to host our board meetings over there for a few months whilst we get the work done over here.
That'd be super fun.
I think so. So real estate, slide 67. These are not anything new that you wouldn't have seen, but essentially what it shows you is where we think schools are going to be needed over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And so the little piece on the little title block on the map itself shows you where we think in terms of time that the schools are going to need to come online, and we are currently working to acquire the properties from the developers in those areas. As a rule of thumb, if a developer goes through with their site development plan to build a housing development with over 750 homes is when we typically require them to mitigate a school site. And our planning team does a great job of looking at demographics, the surrounding schools, zoning, bus routes to determine whether we're going to need an elementary school, a K-8 school, a middle school, or a high school. And so that is the plan that you see that is going to happen over the next 5, 10, 20 years. Again, this get updated as the 5-year plan is of course more accurate than years 10 through 20. But as we continue to get there, years 1, 2, 3 become really tight, where we start looking at exactly what we need, starting to acquire the property, starting to design those schools, making sure that the budgets are in place. And so this goes into the budgets that you get from the finance team that comes in. There's a portion in there that shows that this, how this is. Slide 68, that just shows mitigated properties. So mitigated properties, once a developer comes through with the subdivision of over 750 homes, we basically enter into a contract saying that we require, whether it's 20 acres for a K-8 school, 15 for an elementary, a minimum of 50 with off-site retention. So we can't have retention ponds with 50 acres for a high school, right? 50 acres. So we would typically get into an agreement with them, which the board approves, to say that we plan on acquiring this property in whatever format, whether it's impact fees that we're gonna pay for it with, or impact fees in cash or cash only, depending on what the situation is. But as they get closer and they've met all the requirements, built the site to our requirement, making sure the streets are in place, that utilities are in place, we usually come back with the actual purchase agreement to acquire the property. So we mitigate the site, having a long-term agreement to acquire a piece of property from them, and then as they get closer, then we come back with the actual purchase agreement. So we have quite a few mitigated sites that are there already, as you can see in the block as well. But we actually own 2 sites already, which is the high school site in Edgewater and the high school site in Tahokwa, which are subdivisions. I call them by name, but essentially those are large subdivisions that will be built out over the next 5 to 10 years. And so at the right time, we look at it every single year, depending on the amount of homes that they have built, the amount of permits that they have pulled, is when we determine when that school is going to have to come online. So we start planning every year. Years 1, 2, 3 become really tight. Years 5 is a little bit longer, and then years 10 and 20 is sort of how we look very far out to where we need to be. So the last thing I'll cover is the strategic plan alignment. And so sometimes I think I get carried away. You think you're in sort of more of a construction environment. You're working with architects and engineers. But everything that we do in constant reassurance, constant realignment of our team is to show how the facilities departments, the work that they do, the output that they have impacts the strategic plan, which is essentially to improve student learning. And so what you're seeing is that under the alignment portion, we've added significant steps there for facilities to take over the life of this strategic plan to accomplish. And so you look at our idea is to transform the learning experience. So we spend a lot of time doing research into what the newest technology is, that in terms of not necessarily smart boards, but HVAC systems, the amount of oxygen that needs to be in a room, the different kinds of lighting that impacts students' learning. And so there's a lot more research into that. We just went through a significant process of sitting through for 2 days where Dr. Clayton sat next to me and we looked at every chair possible and every desk possible for every space possible within a school, so that we can pick the next round of FF&E that goes into our schools, because even that has changed.
Where'd you guys go and sit on these chairs?
Yeah.
Here, or was there a warehouse, a chair warehouse, or?
They did bring them into the warehouse, and fortunately for you, there is the chair that we've selected for all the new schools is actually sitting in my office, so it's a good time to give it a test out.
Are you inviting us after this
He's
meeting?
setting meetings with
Absolutely.
us for his office.
Or we can bring the chair here. I don't know, somebody might be listening to it that could bring the chair. But we've looked at that. So the shape of the desk, whether, students where they store their backpack during classes, different age groups, what they need, we went into that level of detail. So our alignment is to support teaching and learning, to make sure that the students have what they need. One of the things that I learned that was very interesting is that the sides of the chairs now, at the bottom, they make it with a different material so that kids, when they can't access their cell phones, they can actually play with it because it's a different material that's
Oh, it's like a
sort of
like
a
a
pattern.
spinner. What are they?
Sensory.
It's a
Like a
sensory
sensory
thing, so it's
thing.
a
Yeah,
pattern. But it helps to increase their focus because they have something to rub. They make the chairs so that they can bounce because the kids typically do this. So our current chairs they're stationary, so they're not able to do that. But the fact is that they can rock. So there's so much to go into it. The chairs have been designed around how custodians clean the room so that they can be lifted up and sat onto a desk so that a custodian doesn't necessarily have to lift them and put them onto the tables themselves. They can be stacked and they have wheels on them so that they can be flipped and wheeled like a cart around so that you can clean or the teacher can pack or rearrange their classroom. Or they can work in group settings and then they can go back to singular settings. So there's a lot that happens in there. And so a part of our design standards that we have targeted in our portion of the strategic plan for the facilities department is to standardize on what lighting we think have the best impact to students' learning, what HVAC systems we have, what furniture we think is going to be there, even down to the flooring. We've clearly changed to LVT, which is luxury vinyl tiling flooring, which doesn't require us to wax schools during the summers anymore. And so we're taking that approach. We're currently working, I just walked out of a meeting in our conference room with some of our engineers that are working on redoing our design guidelines. We have brought in the IT department to relook at theirs to make sure that it's standardized. We've done the same thing for safety and security. We've done the same thing for locksmiths. And so we're looking at standardizing. Essentially what that does is not only how it impacts students' learning, but there's a fiscal impact to that as well. Because we're no longer going to be stocking 10 different kinds of lights. We don't have to stock, whether it's a 2-foot light or whether it's a 4-foot light. It's all going to be one size. We know the manufacturers that we trust that gives us the right kinds of warranty. And so essentially the added stocks that our maintenance department is going to hold is going to be less. So essentially what that should translate to is better operational efficiency, but also fiscal responsibility, where we're not going to be spending as much money on maintenance. So we're taking that approach. We've gone down to the fixtures that we use in the toilets, the doorknobs that we use, and gates have become a big thing recently, and how we can access gates, make sure that they close behind our staff, even with all of the state requirements. And so we're looking at stuff like that along in line with the strategic plan. Another from a fiscal standpoint, one of the benefits that we will see as we continue to open new schools, as we continue to renovate and improve on increase our student capacity in the particular schools, the amount of portables that we rent is going to go down significantly. And so you look at slide 71, you're going to see for a school district our size, for us to have 119 leased portables across the board, that's really low. I mean, I'm seeing school districts that are up in the 1500s, 2000s. And so the 27 that are in orange are there temporarily at OXA to accommodate the construction. Those are going to go away. And our expectation is that as we continue to look at opening new schools in particular area, improve our existing schools like at St. Cloud where we added a wing, we will essentially see a reduction in portable, which leads to a reduction in cost. And then the last slide is slide 72. I wanted to talk a little bit about a facilities condition assessment. It's one of the things that is tied into the strategic plan for the facilities department and operations. We're working really closely on this. The list that we have for a facilities condition assessment essentially is a bunch of experts in their areas go through our facilities and they make a list of the items that are necessary to be changed, or just documenting what we have and when they think it needs to be changed. So they'll look at HVAC, fire alarm, they'll look at roofing, they'll look at flooring, they'll look at the fixtures in the toilet. Ideally, what should happen is that we should have that there's specialized software for it that is tied to a budget. And that budget, essentially when that item comes up for renewal, should be able to generate a clear scope that needs to be done, as well as a realistic budget that the school district is going to need to be spent. That's not something we have right now. Our people, they work hard at getting it done. But when you ask someone in maintenance to go look at a roof, and the roof needs to be replaced, well, I'll use OXA as an example. When we got into the OXA's Ox's roof at the auditorium, we realized that it's not just a roof over. The roof was so old and built out of a material that is no longer allowed in the state of Florida, that we had to take the entire roof off, which we weren't planning to do, which was not in our budget, and replace it. So essentially, this process would avoid that ever happening again, because an architect that is specialized in roofing will look at it and give us the real data that we need. The schools that we've built over the last 10 years are not going to have a major issue, because we know what we've built. We've built tilt wall, we've built flat roofs, we've built TPO roofs, and so we know where we are. And I'm just using that as an example. This is something that I'm working with, that I included in our strategic plan, because I think it's going to help our planning going forward. It's going to help our maintenance department to determine what projects are going to come up, what scopes are going to come up, what estimates are going to come up. And so we're going to include this as one of the things that we're going to do in the next financial year, as a line item in our budget, and go out to find a firm to do it.
This isn't something that's happening now. This is a group of consultants that you want to come in to help us build a better forecasting strategy.
So we have a forecasting strategy currently,
Yeah.
but it's very manual. It's done in Excel spreadsheets. Some of the data might not be totally accurate. And so we have, Scott, do you have one or two people that do it for the entire district? One person that does it for the entire district. And so constantly what you would see is that whenever I come to you, ask you for a budget amendment, I would get a project, meaning when I say I would get a project, facilities would get a project that says, hey, or we're working with our maintenance folks to say, hey, this HVAC system needs to be replaced and we think it's going to cost $3 million. Well, there isn't a lot of definition to what that HVAC project is going to be, but then when we finally get into it, then I probably need like $5 million, and I'm going back to the board to ask for a budget amendment. This is intended to get us all more streamlined so that I don't have to do that. And we're going to forecast the amount of money we need right and get the scopes right, originally. Every school district that has an established facilities and maintenance team has sort of had to move into this direction. Anyone that owns the amount of properties that the school board owns, this is sort of a best practice to get done, to get it reset. This is a one-time that gets done, and then it gets updated once every 5 years. But within that 5 years, our staff takes over and they update it as it goes on.
So this would be, initially, it'll be a full assessment, and then the internal team would be the one to maintain it until
Yes,
the
ma'am.
next cycle?
Correct, yep.
Mm.
And the next cycle would not have to be a full assessment again. It's just targeted,
Incremental?
it's typically targeted like 30% of the district.
Mm.
The older 30% of schools.
Be interested to see how much money we would actually save. So we would hire a consultant to do this.
Correct.
Mhm.
So there's a consultant firm. I think what you're gonna get is a lot of operational efficiencies down the road, because we can plan projects correctly.
Do you have somebody in mind already?
I've worked with school districts to find out who they used. We would have to go out and select somebody using our procurement process, our normal procurement process, but there are quite a few firms that do that now.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see the data on like firms that, or school districts that have implemented this and how much they've actually saved. Because what you're saying is that right now, we are suffering from potential change orders because we did not initially assess correctly.
That is correct.
So I'm curious to see what whomever, or whatever the firms are, because you said there's many, what their data says about doing the initial assessment.
Yeah, Brevard County Schools actually just met with us to do, they kind of shared their data with
Oh, they
us
have
and what
some
they're, so
already?
I'll be
love that.
happy to share that with you.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, that's all that I had in terms of the presentation, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. A few points, board, that I want to make before before I turn it over to you for any additional questions. First, I want to, Dave already did, but I want to acknowledge the other leaders on his team and also the folks that are within his department. Yeah, I think that what's really cool is that we have 2 female directors in our construction and facilities department. So Joan and Rhonda are both fantastic. Rhonda's been with the district obviously for a significant period of time. Joan's newer to to the district, but both have been tremendous supports, no doubt about it. And then there's Shane back there. All right. Shane is another one that within the department, I would say, again, just people do a phenomenal job. I did get a chance to job shadow project manager Tim Guff, and that was a phenomenal experience. He's the project manager over at AAA, so I got a chance to meet with him. That job shadow will be coming out soon, but to see how he's managing all of these projects, and he has an engineering background, and this is what he does. And for him, the meaningful part is the idea that he's doing it in schools. So through that entire process and thinking about where we are with AAA and where we want to be at the end of that project, the idea that our CM, Wharton Smith, on the project, and then Tim and Dave and Joan holding the CM accountable for what these learning spaces are supposed to look like. There's no deviation on what the plan is. The plan is the plan, the timeline is the timeline, and all of our CMs understand that when you do business with Osceola, you will deliver on time with the highest quality work. And so I really commend Mr. Sharma and his team for the work that they've done. I think that we've seen also the cadence of projects. Obviously, we've gone around quite a bit in this district and turned a lot of dirt over with new projects. So I think we're trying to be responsive on a number of different levels, not just instructionally, but also operationally. And I think that our public will start to see a major difference in that. In one case, we're actually assisting with traffic because we are now taking buses and putting them in more local areas. So you will have fewer buses actually crossing the district. And I think that will help the greater community. That's a value that will be seen for sure. Lastly, as it relates to the strategic plan, the hope with the strategic plan was that we would see all this cross-functionality begin to emerge. I don't know any other district where you have the deputy superintendent and the chief facilities officer sitting and playing with chairs. It just doesn't happen. Usually these decisions are made in isolation. They're made as a business decision and not as an instructional decision. Nothing could be more important than determining the future the furniture that is in a classroom where a child is going to be asked to learn. If those spaces are not right, we cannot expect students to learn, and it doesn't matter how beautiful a building is or how new the furniture may be. So you have that cross-functionality occurring. So I'm grateful for that. The work between Scott and Scott's team and Dave's team, making sure that facilities and operations are on the same page, so then these buildings can be maintained properly after we're given that certificate of occupancy. I'll leave with this. I don't know if I've ever heard luxury next to vinyl or tile. But I appreciate the fact that we're putting luxury vinyl tile into schools, and my only request for Mr. Sharma would be that we never find ourselves in a position where we have to value engineer down to just simply vinyl tile. So that's all I have to you, board members. Madam Chair.
Any additional questions?
I know that yesterday we spoke about this.
Yes, ma'am.
How do we ensure that we're using our local businesses and
Yeah, so-
companies? And you gave me some explanation, but can you share?
So, great question. So we have a small and veteran business office that's within the procurement department, Sarah oversees. And their function is to specifically go out and target small, local, and veteran businesses within the Osceola County community. Every bit of procurement that we do not just with facilities, but even our operational stuff, whether it's fuel, whether it's buying parts and equipment. We would go out to the community because we have to follow state law on how we procure. We would publicly advertise, we would get vendors that come in, they would bid. So far, I think we've done a pretty good job. So on our larger projects like AAA or OXA, we have a target for our construction managers to meet in terms of their small and veteran businesses. So they do outreaches. So they would typically, I can't tell you the amount of times we've been downtown Kissimmee where they've brought in all of the local vendors and say, hey, listen, I'm gonna have flooring. And we've encouraged them to work on saying, all right, if a vendor doesn't particularly have the bonding capacity to work at, the size of a AAA, for you to break out a small part of the project to give it to them. So you would find, local vendors that are doing flooring for us. So the vendor that did the Transportation East facility is a local small business within Osceola County. So we target them. We get a lot less than you would expect. One of the things that Katrina is doing this summer, Katrina Ponzini, who oversees the Small Veteran Business Office, is she's having a local vendor fair this summer at Toho. And so we will make sure that you're invited, but we typically put it out on our social media, our websites, but we include all of our construction managers, whether you hear Wharton Smith, Williams Company, Pirtle, they would come and they would bring tables. So they would register those small businesses as subcontractors to them. And so as they go out to bid some of our larger jobs, they would send out the bid packages and say, hey, what do you want to bid at? Outside of that, our normal things that we do, whether it's we're hiring for landscaping or we're hiring for plumbing or electrical, where we would do small stuff, we would typically use vendor link and we would put it out, and it's typically open to the entire public, every vendor. Now, I won't tell you that we would target and pay a premium to use a local vendor, but they are encouraged to compete because we will hire the guy with the lowest price. And so there is an opportunity for vendors to get in there. Our procurement department does a great job of explaining that, how vendor link, how do you get on a bid list, how do you see all of our bids. We share the same software that Osceola County uses. So we both share vendor link, so that's where we put all of our bids out. And then if you get like a continuing services contract with us, then typically you get invited whenever we have a job. So if you're on the electrical bid, then whenever we have an electrical job, we just send it to everybody, but we hire the person with the lowest price that can complete the job. So there are multiple opportunities, but the vendor fair is usually the best place for them to learn a lot about, and it's going to be at Toho. I don't know what the exact date is, but it's over the summer.
And she sends a newsletter to them and everything. She keeps them up to date on lots of things related to how they can register their space.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I think go ahead. Do you have a question?
I'll go next. I think for the high school AAA and the Cross Prairie K-8, I do have concerns about drop off and pickup. Just because I get a lot of concerns about that, about blocking the road and the long lines, and then teachers not being able to get in.
So, well, I was going to say, this is a question that this goes into planning now.
Yeah.
So this is actually part of the initial conversation when we look at school design. So there has to be capacity for bringing in cars. So then we take the cars off the roadway and we're able to stack them appropriately. So we've been able to do this effectively, most recently at Knights Point. So this is actually something that we regularly study to ensure that we are not spilling out onto a regular road. So the actual car allotment, I think.
At Knights Point is 225.
Right, but at AAA, they're planning.
Yeah, it's significant. It's upwards of 200
more.
250 cars or so.
There was intentionality behind the idea of bringing the cars off the road, creating the loop, so then we have a long enough queue that will take all of those cars there for pickup off the road. The other good news is that with a high school, you open with 3 grade levels. You don't open with 4 grade levels. So we will not open with a full school that first year. we'll be able to flush out a lot of the concerns over the course of that first year, if we have any related to traffic. And we know that there are some things that are happening along that roadway, along Nova Road, to assist with some of the increased traffic that will come with the new school. And the additional development that's actually taking place in that area.
So if I can add to that.
Sure.
When we originally built some of the older schools, they were intended to be neighborhood schools. So majority of the students, if you look at the zoning for them, should be walking or biking to school. But mom or dad chooses to drive them to school. We hear a very famous story of the guy across the school from the street because he didn't want his kid to cross the road, just drives his kid to school right across. That's very common, and so that's part of the problem. Within 2 miles, the expectation is that the child would bike or walk to school because there are safe walking paths that are put in place, sidewalks that are built, crossing guards that are put in by the county or the cities in order to accommodate that. Part of the challenge is most people choose to drive their kids to school when their kids are not doing that. Now, if we're to build where we can accept every single car, it's not gonna happen. Typically, the target is usually between 15 to 20% of the student population is what is expected to be driving. That's it, because we build neighborhood schools. Majority of the people should be walking or biking to school, and that's part of the problem, where they choose to drive. Now, that's obviously everyone's choice. So what we've done is we've adjusted, and so like Dr. Shannon said, at Knights Point or Voyager or AAA or over across Prairie, we can stack about 200 cars on site. Now, if a parent shows up at 6 in the morning wanting to get on site, that's not gonna happen because we don't have staff there until half an hour before school opens. So that's when the gates open. And so a part of the challenge, we constantly have this conversation with the county, so I'll tell you my story is all lined up, is that we can't dictate when someone wants to show up, but we can tell you how we operate, and we message that out quite often. Please don't show up at 1 o'clock for a 3:15 dismissal. Because then what happens is you get in the queue and you hold up traffic. But as part of it, and I'm happy to show you, every single new school that we've built recently has a way for people to get in, even if the current queue is backed up. There is an alternate entrance for them to get in and get to a parking spot, or for our teachers to leave. We've also maximized space within the bus loops because we have dedicated bus loops that are not typically part of the parent loop. You know, they're completely separate. Where we put a lot of our teacher parking in that area because we know that they can leave or come in whenever is necessary. So new schools are definitely getting better. Now I can tell you that majority of the road projects or the parking lot projects that you've seen on this list, on these lists that have been done. Last year we put a turn lane at Narcoossee Elementary School. This year we're going to do one at Narcoossee Middle School. We added at St. Cloud Elementary School. We added additional parking and stacking. We've done that at Neptune Middle School. We did it at Neptune Elementary School, where we're shifting from maximizing the amount of space with the land that we have, and we're bringing more traffic on site because we realize that we're a partner in this, that we can potentially help with some of the traffic backups, but it's not going to be perfect. Ideally, we would like people to use the spaces during the times that they should use them. I think it'll help everybody across the board.
Any additional questions?
Nope.
All good?
Thank you.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Oh, a vote on
For what?
On the facilities workshop, that is an action item.
There was an action item?
No.
Oh,
There's
no.
no-
We'll have it as an action item to accept the minutes in the next board meeting.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't vote in workshop.
But I vote that we adjourn.
Good job, Dave.